I meet my father for the first time in the darkened stairwell of a friend's flat some 40 kilometers from the University of Nigeria. I'm 26. One sweltering Saturday, a few weeks after my arrival to the country, my hostess appears in the open guest room door. I glance up from typing a letter to my mum back home in the US and see her in the doorway. Her wide caramel face stills, made foreign in the absence of her smile. She announces seriously, as if addressing a council of elders, "Your father has come." It takes a moment to sink in. No one has ever said these words to me, after all. Gradually, through the open windows, I hear the slam of car doors, male voices speaking Igbo, the shouts of the neighborhood children, and a faint tinny sound like faraway construction work. I look down to see my fingers on the typewriter. The distant clack, clack, clack is me, still typing. I read what my fingers have written. I can hear the children hollering in the courtyard downstairs. They are saying, "Faith's father has come," period. "Faith," my hostess's voice nudges me gently. "Go and greet your father." I stand up and smooth my imported floral wrapper. So this is it. No warning. Will I look recognizable to him, I wonder, made more familiar by my Nigerian dress? I calculate the amount of time it will take my father to climb the back stairs, enter the living room, dispense with the long series of African greetings and "your father's father's people, how now," and be seated. I wait twice that amount, then step into the hallway. The living room is empty, so too the dining room and kitchen. Suddenly panicking, I tear down the back steps, making the 3-step flights to the courtyard in record time. The neighbor's 3 sons, bandy-legged and wide-eyed, cluster around an ancient Peugeot covered in red dust. The engine breathes warm. Seeing me, the boys nudge each other and mouth the same silent phrase like aquarium fish. "The doctor." Of course, my father must be coming up the front steps reserved for formal company. I sprint up the back stairs, through the kitchen where my hostess is now preparing cups of milky tea with black market sugar, through the living room with its heavy vinyl furniture and plastic doilies, and out the front door. I'm halfway down the cement steps when I run into 2 men on their way up. The first is young, with heady lidded eyes and a beret set at a jaunty angle. I assume the other is my father. My father and I stand in the dim stairwell and regard each other with polite half-smiles. I await emotion, love, anger, recognition. The second man is short, like me, his weathered skin darker than mine. A strip of wiry black hair encircles the back and sides of his head. There's a space in his mouth where a tooth should be. He wears, I checked to be sure because I wouldn't want to get this wrong, a checked polyester leisure suit. This cannot be my father. I wonder, where's the broad-shouldered rugby player who hung over my bed all my life? Whither that confident, amused smile? Where is the man whose name evokes awe from Nigerians around the world? He's a big man, everyone always says in hushed tones, and in Nigeria, big is certainly what matters. Doctor, professor, reverend, chief, honorable minister of education, honorable commissioner of health, absent, yes, but big, big, big. I try to imagine this tiny wrinkled man outside of this stuffy stairwell. My father in the 90s, sweltering in the pulpit in his heavy woolen cowl, wooden cross chained round his neck. My father in the 80s, stripped naked at the side of the highway, the robber's bullet lodging itself in his leathery chest, right next to the square outline of his pacemaker. My father in the 70s, being sworn in at the Capitol, bedecked in embroidered cap and layers of shimmering equete, Chiefs fan and cowtail whisk in his hands. My father in the 60s, pausing after a scrum to wipe his face and wave to my mother, who sits in the bleachers, hair in a ponytail, reading 4 Ways of Being Human. Then, through the murk of the landing, I see his nose. Small, brown, round, familiar. That certainly explains something my mother's family of hook-nosed Nordics can't. And who's going to claim these big feet? And those dark eyes, isn't this why my mother fell in love in the first place, where this story begins? The first words the man in the checked polyester leisure suit says to me are, "Your mother always liked fruit." Did she? It's true that if left to my own devices, I would eat nothing but. The summer before college, I worked in a fruit processing plant and didn't go to the bathroom once the entire summer, the price of shoveling handfuls of unripe cherries straight from the conveyor belt into my mouth. I had no idea my mother liked fruit. "Bico," he says to the young man in the beret standing behind him, "please." The man saunters forward, lanky and loose-limbed, and transfers the bags into my father's outstretched hands. I watch, silent. The plastic bags rustle, knocking against each other. My father's fingers tremble. The young man steps back and closes those heavy eyes, appearing to fall asleep on his feet. My father turns to me and holds out the bags. I extend both hands. He slips them over my fingers, his touch papery cool on my wrists. I peer inside. He has brought the entire market. There are bunches of sweet finger bananas stretching upward like pale baseball gloves, softball-sized green oranges, passion fruit with wrinkled dark skin like his, fat jade grapes, misshapen popo, even a prickly pineapple working its claws through the plastic. The musk of buttery mango and softening guava perfumes the dark corridor. My father is holding out his hand. We shake, the bags whispering as the fruit bruises against itself. The way we smile and squint in the dimness reminds me of how a stray dog ducks a bit when you pet it, hungry for touch, fearful of what comes next.
1960, Albert, age 20, U.S. Marine Corps boot camp, San Diego, California. As Albert soaked up, he had the feeling someone was staring at his back. It went without saying that you kept your eyes to yourself in here. He faced the wall and shot a quick glance over his right shoulder. Sure enough, Jenkins was looking directly at him, obviously confused. "What, you never seen a black man before?" Albert yelled with his back still turned. As he thought about it, he realized that Jenkins probably had not been in the same room with a black man before joining the Marines. Jenkins was from a small town in Mississippi, so far into the deep south he might not have even heard about integration yet. "Well, Jenkins stuttered. "You funny or something?" Albert asked. Back home, he never would have made such a comment to a white man. But the drill sergeants made it clear to the new recruits that they would all fight together and die together as equals. He felt no need to hold his tongue, and it felt good to test out this new equality of speech. Jenkins' face turned bright red. Then he said loudly, "My daddy told me all niggas had tails, only you ain't got no tail." The chatter and snickering from the other recruits ended abruptly. The only sound was the spray of the showers hitting the concrete floor. Jenkins' words stung Albert like a hard slap to his face. His stomach knotted and he felt a hot flush of anger inflame him. All those old feelings, all the reasons his family left his small country hometown in Arkansas, and the reasons he decided to join the Marines, flew through his mind in an instant. He had no tolerance for ignorance, and he was not in the mood to educate anyone. His hands balled into fists as he turned to face Jenkins. In that instant, he remembered a line from the play he saw just before he started boot camp, "A Raisin in the Sun." He heard the line repeat in his head, in his own mother's voice. "When you starts measuring somebody, measure him right, child. Measure him right. You make sure that you done taken into account all the hills and valleys he's come through to get to wherever he is." At least Jenkins was honest. There were plenty of people who smiled in Albert's face, then called him nigger when his back was turned. Jenkins was just speaking from his experience, and that's all any man could ever be asked to do. Albert could respect that. Tightness in his chest and lungs made him realize he'd been holding his breath. He unclenched his fist and exhaled slowly. The steam of his angry breath mixed with the mist of the showers and dissipated, along with his rage. "No," Albert said coolly, "I don't have a tail. And I'd be willing to bet there's a few other things your ditty was wrong about too." As Albert rinsed off, he shook his head and took a slow, deep breath in and out. Jenkins got lucky this time. 1979, Audrey Therese, age 5, Jacksonville, North Carolina. Daddy had gone overseas, as Mom called it, for a long time. While he was away, I learned all kinds of fun things from Mom and her parents. Grandpa Joe taught me how to play card games like gin rummy, blackjack, and a game he called Beggar Thy Neighbor, more commonly known as Go Fish. Granny showed me how to cover sliced mangoes with cheesecloth to protect them from the flies while they dried in the sun. We would use them to make mango pickle. My mom taught me how to peel the huge shrimp she would use to make my favorite Burmese dish, bazoonhin. She even showed me how to eat Burmese style, always with the right hand only. She would bend low to speak directly into my ear and whisper, "The left hand is the devil's hand." Somehow, none of these amazing skills helped me make friends on the first day of school. On my first bus ride, all the kids around me knew each other already, and they were yelling back and forth, laughing and throwing things at each other. I didn't know anyone. I didn't talk to anyone, and no one talked to me. The same thing happened on the ride home. All the white kids seemed to sit up front, and all the black kids sat in the back. There were no Latinos, no Asians, and then there was me, trying to find a spot somewhere in the middle. I heard one of the older black girls say to no one in particular, "Yeah, she's new, and she's funny acting." I didn't think I was being funny at all. In fact, I felt kind of sad. At dinner that night, I asked, "What does funny acting mean? And how am I supposed to act on the bus?" Mom and Granny and Grandpa just looked at each other and shrugged. "None of us went to school in America, my child, and we didn't have nice yellow buses to ride in like you do. We just don't know." I didn't know it at the time, but I was being raised as a first-generation American. My existence was an exile based on circumstances beyond my doing or control. I folded my arms on the table and rested my head on my arms. I missed my daddy. Daddy would know what I should say to the kids on the bus. He would know exactly what to do. Daddy always did.